Most people have an excellent place to build a professional level recording studio right on their property. Sometimes it's even their backyard. And this is a 2-car detached garage, or garage if it's attached to your house. And it's an incredible space. What most people don't realize is how to convert it into a high performance sound isolated room and what that actually takes. And today I'm going to show you exactly how that happens with a full set of completed plans that we just did for one of our clients who is based out of California and has a beautiful backyard 2-car garage space that is going to turn into his drum and band practice oasis, as well as this unique thing, which is his 50 electric guitar collection, which will hang on the wall around the studio. So if you're interested in learning more about how to sound isolate your own garage and turn it into a professional recording studio, this is the right video for you. Let's dive in. All right, so here we have the very first page of the plan set. And one thing I want to say that's really cool about this structure is that it has a stucco siding around the exterior, which is really awesome for sound isolation. Stucco is extremely heavy. It has a ton of mass, and that is exactly what you need on your exterior walls to stop sound. So we got really lucky on that front of things. And then this wall right here, which is dividing the garage a little bit less than half, is giving us 2 layers of 5/8 inch drywall and a double wall system, which is giving us plenty of sound isolation for what we need in this situation here. I just wanted to talk about that first. Now, also imagine those 50 guitars going around the rim of this studio. It's going to be pretty epic. His desk is going to be actually right here, and it's to be able to look out at a beautiful backyard area in his home. And then we're going to have 2 drum sets here, a horn section, keyboards, guitar players. The whole thing is laid out, and I'm going to show you exactly what that's like in these next few pages here. Before we dive into a lot of the specifics, I want to start on one of the things that many people miss in their garage studio, which is the ceiling structure and the roof structure. In the case of this plan, we actually had a set of ceiling trusses, which are shown by these dotted lines here. And let me actually show you an image of the ceiling trusses in the garage so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So this is actually a photo the client gave us, and you can see that this is what contractors and builders call trusses. And the reason they're called trusses is because they're pre-engineered and they have this unique shape. And one of the things about them is if you see this in your garage, it's a warning sign that you should not turn it into a cathedral ceiling, meaning you cannot just easily take out these trusses and make your roof still hold up without any extra support. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I want to tear out all these and make my garage, a super high ceiling. And I always have to tell them, unfortunately, hey, that's not going to be easy. It's doable, but it's going to cost a fortune, which most people don't want to spend. So that's important as a side note. For this project in particular, the client had contacted a structural engineer, but hadn't gotten all the specifics yet. So we put in a very important clause here, which I'm going to zoom in for you, that explains the ceiling structural disclaimer for the client and also helps the structural engineer look at these plans and get a real quick idea of what's going on. So when the client shows these plans to the structural engineer, they'll do what's called a structural repair if it's needed. Now, you might think a repair means something's broken. In this case, with trusses, it's just the naming they use. It essentially means that they're going to add extra materials, usually like wood bracing, sistering wood joists, sometimes pieces of plywood as what's known as a scab. And all of these things can be done to increase the load limit on the bottom chord, meaning the bottom piece of wood of the truss. So all of that is some pretty technical stuff, but it's really important that you understand it before you dive into these projects. So we have calculated that for the engineer to help them with their own calculations and show all of that in there. So that's really important that before this client actually embarks on construction, that they must have that engineering document and also have the engineer look it over. So I'm going to kind of breeze through a few of these pages here, but we've got, our ceiling plan there showing some of the details. We've got our fire blocking, which a lot of people miss, which is essentially showing that every 10 feet in a double wall system, you need to have a form of fire blocking to prevent the spread of what we call horizontal fire, meaning fire and smoke moving sideways through the walls. And that is to international code. So we follow the IRC, which is the International Residential Code Book. And you can see some more of these for the fire blocking, also to prevent fire from going into the ceiling, which is important. We've got our nice building elevations. We actually made another video a couple of weeks ago just about this French door, which is a custom French door through the ISO store. Really interesting if you want to learn more about that. Big, beautiful window here. We've got our HVAC system. I'm going to go into all those details in a second. And we've got our wall sections here, which show the contractor exactly how to build the walls, and our wonderful French door plans for not only the contractor, but also for the ISO store to build out the actual door that we want them to build custom for this project. Then we got our window, probably going to use one of our favorite vendors for windows right now called Soundproof Windows Inc. And then we get into what I really want to show you guys here, which is the electrical plan, because this plan is really technical, and I think it really goes into something that a lot of people overthink, or underthink, I should say, and don't really put a lot of effort into how they're going to wire up their studio. So we essentially break this down into two plan views, meaning looking down on the floor. And the electrical power plan shows any sort of power or low voltage, meaning audio related wires. What's really interesting here is we've got all these little things that say AO and SD. Those are differentiating between the audio only circuit on the electrical panel versus any other circuit that could be used for lighting. And what we really want to do is make sure that our audio line doesn't share a circuit with lighting, HVAC, or any other noisy or sort of any kind of electrical that might give you some sort of interference. We want to try to make sure that our audio is off of those lines. So that explains our audio, and we've kind of placed it around the room in what we call different worlds. So we got like the keyboard world and the horn world, and his two drum sets over here. And these are all laid out so that they're specifically there for the person that's using them. What's super interesting about this project is you'll see all these little triangles, and we have the WC4F, which is actually the wall cat. And I really love using audio over Ethernet or audio over Internet Protocol, AOIP. And it just simplifies everything, and it's a lot cheaper than running snakes through the walls. And it also allows for infinite numbers of upgrades in the future. Any sort of data cable can be used for a numerous amount of different ways to send information through the walls, not just audio, so video, different things like that. But in this case, what we're really doing here is we're going to have 34 Cat6 cables terminating over here, which sounds pretty insane, but in this case, it's because this client wanted to have a lot of options. They wanted to be able to use these Cat6A cables with an RJ45 port, which is typical for what you would plug your internet modem into. We're basically just allowing that client to convert XLR cables, TRS cables, meaning 1/4 inch balanced cables, and also even you could use 1/4 inch unbalanced cables through what's known as a DI or direct box, and then that going into the RJ45 as well, or the wall cat, which is a RJ45 that plugs into the back of a set of 4 XLR female acceptors, which is pretty cool. So you can just plug right into the wall and it converts it into a Cat6A cable. And then the other thing that we might want to use is MIDI in and out. And so that we can actually send MIDI in and out over Cat6, which is really cool. So we have this one type of cable that can do numerous different things. And that's the important thing to take away. And all of that needs to be put onto a diagram like this so that the electrician who's installing all the low voltage knows exactly what they're doing. And that's the key point. And you'll notice that we keep things at least 1 foot away. All these dimensions are really important on here, and that's going to help the installer understand what we're doing. Also have a very, very big, let me kind of zoom out on this. So here's the electrical notes and performance specifications, which looks like just a ton of words, right? But the electrician, when they read through this, they're actually going to understand all the little details that are needed to install this electrical correctly, including the low voltage, including the lighting, which leads directly to my next thing, which is the lighting, which I want to explain here. This client has a ton of guitars on the walls. It's really important that we have the track lighting all the way around. And then we had this clouds from one of our preferred vendors, Music City Acoustics, and they will ship these clouds directly out to the client and they will hang them in the space. And then the electrician will connect the pre-hung lights into the wire that's already coming through the ceiling and creating a small penetration that's sealed airtight with acoustical sealant. So you can see just how complex this is. The legend shows all the information the electrician will need. We also have a power schedule so they know how many outlets to purchase, electrical lighting schedule, everything is laid out perfectly before construction even begins so that everyone knows what's going on when it comes to this complex electrical diagram. You can even see the layout of the outlets on the walls. You can see why a typical architect or contractor would struggle in this area, because it's just so far and beyond typical residential planning. And that's why you want someone who is an expert in this field and can help you navigate your specific needs, because every single electrical plan we do is completely different. Next, I want to show you guys the mechanical plan, because this one is really unique and specific to basically this room functioning also as a guitar museum and not only as a recording studio. We've got our mini split, which is heating and cooling. And then we've got our ERV over here, which is sending fresh air into the studio and pulling fresh air out and back to the outside. You can see the exterior ports on the garage right here. What's unique here is we also added in a dehumidifier so that in the instances where it gets a little bit too humid in the studio, we can control the humidity specifically with this dehumidifier right here. The dehumidifier has its own set of baffle boxes. Another thing that's really interesting about this layout in a garage is that we had to push this set of baffle boxes up. You can see how these are all on the same line. At first, we actually had them down lower here. The reason we had to raise them up is because it functions as a garage and the car needs to pull up underneath the baffle boxes. So one of the things that I love about this job is always integrating this professional level recording studio with the aspects of a normal home, like a garage, or the fact that, you know, it needs to function in some way that a recording studio would never have to account for. That explains the overview of this project that I really wanted to focus on. I'll give you guys a quick glance at like showing the contractor how we build the baffle boxes and how it all goes through the walls. Just all these little details that are just so important, and also the acoustic clouds and some of the paneling the client wants on the walls and the overall acoustic layout at the end there. So there's one last point that I really want to make, and it's this idea that a lot of people think, wow, Wilson, look at that great set of plans. You know, it's 14 pages. It's highly detailed, really cool. You give that to the client and you're done, right? And no, that could not be farther from the truth. This is actually the very beginning of where the real fun begins, because what happens next is that we are going to work with the client to onboard a contractor. We're going to help them with navigating the structural engineering. We're going to help them through the entire build process. If there's any changes the client wants, we will do what's called redlining the document. And that means that we'll make changes to the document and notate it so that any contractor who looks at this document can see how it's evolved over time. And that's perfectly normal in the construction business and in the design business. And so one of the things that I think is so important, and I've seen this with some other designers, which I didn't like, is that they'll give a client a document, a plan set, and then they just disappear. You know, they might try to email the designer like, oh, I'm busy, I can't get back to you. They don't respond to the emails. That is not cool. And in my opinion, that is the worst part of this whole process, because the real important part is when the builder and the designer and the client and everybody's working together to make this thing actually a reality. Right now it lives on paper, which, trust me, is super important. We want to lay out everything on paper so we all can be on the same page, quite literally. But after that, we need to make sure this thing actually functions in real life. The builder is going to go in having never built a recording studio in their life. There needs to be someone like myself, or if you hire another designer, to go out and actually guide that contractor through the phases, through the different aspects. When they have questions, they can call me at any time. And that is a highly valuable resource that I can't emphasize enough, that I don't think comes across enough in the design world, and especially in our world where that customer service is so important. With that spiel, I just want to let you guys know that if you're on this journey, if you are planning on doing a garage studio like this, and you really want to do it right, you know the complexity, you understand how hard this is, the first step is always going to be using this amazing resource that I created called the Soundproof Site Assessment. And what the Soundproof Site Assessment is it's a quick questionnaire that gives you some really detailed feedback answers, how good your site will be for creating a sound isolated space for a recording studio, a home theater, a hi-fi listening room, even a silent home office. It's going to be super helpful for that. So you'll actually get a little score, which is kind of fun. You get a green light, a yellow light, or a red light, which means probably should abandon that space. And you'll also get direct feedback saying, like as if I was a contractor giving you a site analysis. You get a little report at the end that explains exactly how your site is. So if you want to take that, you can go right away to soundproofyourstudio.com/plan. That is soundproofyourstudio.com/plan. My name is Wilson Harwood. I am the founder of Soundproof Your Studio and our design firm SPYS Designs, and I'm the principal as well. And I just hope you all have enjoyed this video. If your project is at that high tier where you need a designer to make sure that there aren't major mistakes that can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, then this is the type of work you want to do. And we build studios like this all over North America, and that level of quality is what we hold as our standard at SPYS Designs.